Erase you from your own mind? I had just sold the biotech company I built from a rented garage, Helix Arden Labs, for $60 million. And to celebrate, I took my only daughter, Emily, and her husband, Ryan, to the most expensive restaurant in the city, Loranger Blue. When my Swiss banker called to confirm the wire, I stepped away from the table, listened to 40 years of work reduced to one calm sentence. Funds received. Congratulations, Mr. Cole. And when I turned to go back, a young waiter with an empty tray and shaking hands blocked my way. "Sir, I'm sorry," he whispered, eyes darting toward the dining room. "But I just saw your daughter pour something into your wine. I've handled hostile takeovers and blackmail attempts. I can smell a liar, and this kid just looks scared. Tell me exactly what you saw," I said, keeping my voice level. "Your son-in-law pointed at the painting behind you and asked some loud questions, so you turn." The waiter said, swallowing, "And while you were looking away, your daughter pulled a little brown vial from her purse, opened it, dumped a white powder into your red wine, swirled the glass once, and hid the vial back in her bag. It was 2 seconds, but I saw it. My name is Daniel Cole. I'm 68, a widower, and that 60 million wasn't a lottery ticket. It was every late night since I was 25. My late wife, Hannah, saw through people better than I ever did, and she never trusted Ryan. He doesn't see Emily, he sees your balance sheet," she'd say after dinner. "He looks at you like you're a payout, not a person. I told her she was being harsh, told her he was just ambitious." 3 years after she died, those words were suddenly ringing in my ears in that marble lobby. Emily and Ryan live in a glass house on a hill and lease cars for more each month than Hannah and I ever paid on our mortgage. They talk about private clubs and yacht weeks while I still drive a 10-year-old sedan and live in the same brick house we bought when Emily was a baby. Ryan runs some global import company, but I'm a numbers man. I know what overdue notices look like when debt collectors accidentally mail them to my address. 6 months ago, when Whispers of the Helix sale hit the finance blogs, their attention changed overnight. "Dad, let us help with all this paperwork. You shouldn't be alone with that much money on the line. Dad, Ryan knows about investments. You got a lot going on, and you've been so forgetful lately." They said I'd missed a dinner, but I hadn't. They had canceled and blamed my memory. Ryan started patting my shoulder a little too often. "We just want to make sure everything's safe. Old man, people your age get taken advantage of every day." So when this trembling waiter told me he'd watch my daughter doctor my drink, everything snapped into place. A white powder, not a liquid, something clean and clinical that would disappear into the wine and bloom. Later, as confusion, slurred speech, maybe a seizure, enough to make a 68-year-old man look like he'd broken, not enough to make anyone think murder. "What's your name?" I asked. "Evan," he said. "I just started. If I'm wrong, I'll probably be fired, but if I'm right." He didn't finish. We both knew what it meant if he was right. I pulled out my wallet, slipped some bills into his palm, and pushed one of my plain business cards under his thumb, the one with just my name and private number. "You didn't see anything tonight, Evan," I said quietly. "Finish your shift, go home, and forget you spoke to me. If you ever need help or a job, you call that number and tell me where we met." His eyes widened. Then he nodded hard and hurried toward the kitchen, leaving me alone with the chandeliers and the sound of my own pulse. I took a breath, smoothed my jacket, fixed my expression into the mild, slightly distracted look people expect from a man my age, and walked back into the glittering dining room toward the table, where my only child was laughing with a man who just helped her try to erase me. "Everything okay, Dad?" Emily asked as I sat, her eyes wide and innocent. Ryan smirked over his mineral water. "Bank problems, big man. Just lawyers. Confirming they've been overpaid," I said, and then I let my elbow slip, sending my water glass crashing over the white tablecloth and into Ryan's lap. He swore and jumped back. The nearest waiter rushed over with napkins. Emily gasped and scooted her chair, and in those 5 seconds of noisy chaos my hands moved with the same calm they'd had when I signed the sale contract. I slid my poisoned wine glass into Emily's place and pulled her untouched one in front of mine. By the time the mess was cleaned up, her fingers were resting casually on the stem of glass that had been meant for me. "To family," I said a minute later, raising my now clean wine and looking straight into her eyes. "And to everyone getting exactly what they deserve." She clinked my glass with a bright, practiced smile. "To family. then took a long, confident sip of the wine that held her own plan dissolving inside it. And as I watched my daughter swallow the dose that was supposed to destroy my mind, I had no idea how fast she was about to fall apart in front of that whole restaurant, or how far they'd already gone to legally steal my entire life. If you're still listening, comment what you would have done at that table. And get ready, because the way Emily's body reacted to that drink was just the first step of a much bigger trap. The change came faster than I expected. One minute Emily was laughing at one of Ryan's tired stories about European partners, twirling her fork over a plate of food she wasn't really eating. The next her laugh cut off mid-sound. She blinked too long. Then again, "Dad, is it hot in here?" she murmured, her hand going to her temple. Ryan barely glanced at her, too busy explaining how he was going to leverage my logistics. "It's a 5-star restaurant. You'll live," he said. Then kept talking about shipping lanes like I hadn't spent 30 years building them. I watched her more than I listened to him. Her pupils were shrinking. Her fingers trembled around the stem of the glass. "Ryan, I don't feel right," she slurred, the last word dragging like her tongue had gained weight. That got his attention. He frowned, annoyed instead of concerned. "You've had half a glass of wine. Emily, don't embarrass yourself." The conversation at the nearby tables was a soft, expensive murmur. Cutlery clinked. A pianist was playing something gentle in the corner, and right in the middle of all that quiet luxury, my daughter tried to stand up and missed the edge of her chair completely. The leg scraped. She grabbed at the table. Her eyes rolled back, and she slumped sideways into the velvet banquette, her arms twitching like someone had turned down the volume on her body. Every head in the room swiveled toward us. I let half a second pass, just long enough for the shock to register on faces. Then I pushed my chair back so hard it screeched on the marble and shouted, "Emily, honey, look at me. Someone call an ambulance." Ryan just stared, frozen, his mouth open. He didn't reach for her, he didn't check her breathing. He looked like a man watching his winning lottery ticket blow into a storm drain, not a husband watching his wife seize. "Ryan, do something," I yelled, shaking his shoulder hard enough that a normal son-in-law would have snapped out of it and dropped to the floor. "Call an ambulance. Don't just sit there." That jolted him, but not in the way it should have. He grabbed his phone, but instead of dialing, he turned on the restaurant manager who was hurrying over. "She's fine," Ryan hissed. "She just mixed her anxiety meds with wine again. No need to call anyone. We'll take her home. I'm so sorry for the scene." He bent over Emily, not to help her but to haul her upright. "Come on. Get up. You're okay. We're leaving." His voice was soft but furious in her ear. He needed her out of that room, away from doctors and tests and neutral professionals who would want to know exactly what was in her blood. "She's not drunk." I snapped, dropping to one knee beside her and taking her cold, slack hand. She barely touched the wine. "Look at her. She's shaking. She can't speak." The manager hesitated, torn between Ryan's polished confidence and the reality on the seat. That's when a familiar voice cut to the panic. "I've already called emergency, sir." Evan, the young waiter, stood a few feet away, his own phone still in his hand, his face pale but his voice firm. "They said not to move her. They're on their way." Ryan's head whipped around. The look in his eyes when he stared at that kid was pure, naked hatred. "You did what?" he spat. "You're finished here. You hear me. Finished. She's fine." The manager stepped between them. "Mr. Ford, our policy is clear. If a guest collapses, we call an ambulance. Please step back." The room had gone so quiet I could hear Emily's ragged breathing. Distant sirens started to wail outside, growing louder, closing in, and as the paramedics rushed in with a stretcher and brushed Ryan aside, I knew one thing for certain. Whatever powder they'd chosen, it wasn't meant to kill me on the spot. It was meant to make me look like this, limp and confused, while Ryan stood over me and told everyone I'd been slipping for months. In the ambulance, I played my role, hunched and shaking, asking, "Will she be okay? Is she dying?" Like any panicked old man. But inside, I was counting seconds, building a timeline, rehearsing how I'd tell this story if I lived. Because if you understand anything about what happens next, understand this. The drug in Emily's veins was never meant for her. It was meant to turn me into a legal corpse so Ryan could grab my $60 million and walk away clean. And at that point, I still didn't know that by sunrise, he'd already scheduled a judge to stamp that plan. Approved, if you watch this far. Hit like so more people see how far family greed can go. because the hospital wasn't the end of their scheme. It was where I finally saw how deep it really went. The emergency room at St. Jude's was bright and cold, the kind of light that makes even healthy people look sick. They wheeled Emily straight into a bay, her eyes half open and unfocused. Ryan shoved himself in after her, waving his hands at the first doctor in scrubs he saw. "It's an allergy. Shellfish. She just needs an EpiPen," he said, trying to sound authoritative. The young doctor, Chin, didn't even look at him at first. He shone a pen light into Emily's pupils, checked her airway, her pulse, her skin, then finally turned to Ryan. "Her airway is clear. No swelling, no rash. This is not anaphylaxis," he said flatly. "What did she take?" Ryan's mask cracked for a second, just a flicker, then came back. "I told you, it's food. She's always dramatic. Just give her something and let me take her home." He moved to block the monitor as if that would hide the numbers. I stood just inside the curtain, hands clasped like I was praying. "Doctor, please, just help her," I said, my voice shaking in exactly the way I wanted it to. She just started acting confused at dinner, and then she fell. Chin looked at me, then at Ryan, and I saw the moment he made his choice. He ignored Ryan completely. "Full tox screen, lab, CT, Narcan just in case, and get her on fluids," he told the nurse. Ryan's head snapped back. "No, absolutely not. I refuse tests. I'm her husband. This is ridiculous. It's an allergy." He was too loud, too frantic, trying to stop the one thing that could ruin his story. The nurse paused. Chin didn't. "Sir, if you continue to interfere with my ability to treat your wife, security will remove you," he said calmly, not raising his voice, just stating fact. Ryan shut up, but his eyes were burning holes in the doctor's back. An hour later, we were in a plastic chair waiting room that smelled like burnt coffee and fear. Ryan paced, muttering into his phone. I recognized one name he hissed into the receiver. Reed. Like it was a lifeline, I sat hunched, looking small, replaying Hannah's voice in my head. "He's a taker, Daniel." The automatic doors kept sliding open and shut as people came and went. And sometime around 3 a.m, Dr. Chin walked in holding a thin stack of papers that might as well have been a bomb. "Mr. Cole," he said, coming straight to me, instead of Ryan, "your daughter has a massive dose of a drug called neurazepine in her system. It's an antipsychotic, something prescribed for severe schizophrenia and bipolar disorder, not anxiety, and definitely not to be mixed with alcohol." I let my mouth fall open like I'd never heard the word. Ryan jumped in. "She must have taken the wrong medication. She's under so much stress. She wouldn't try to hurt herself." Chin cut him off. "This dose doesn't look accidental, and I'm obligated to notify the police and place her on a 72-hour psychiatric hold." Then he looked at me, softer. "The side effect of a dose like this in someone your age would look a lot like sudden dementia, confusion, slurred speech, even psychosis. Do you understand what I'm saying?" I understood perfectly. I just nodded slowly like the information was too big for me. "Doctor, please, just do whatever you have to do to save my girl," I whispered. Ryan was still talking, louder now, desperate. "You're overreacting. I have her real doctor, her specialist, coming here. He'll explain. His name is Dr. Reed. He's been treating her. She's not crazy." That name lodged in my mind like a needle. Reed. I watched Ryan step aside. Phone pressed his ear again, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper that finally told me everything I needed to know. "Reed, it's me. The plan is a mess." "She drank it, not him," he hissed, pacing near the vending machines. He thought I was too far away or too out to listen. "They ran tox. They know what it is, and there's a hearing at 8 a.m. How are we supposed to get a conservatorship over him if he's standing here sane and she's in psych?" That word hit me like a slap. Conservatorship. I stared at the speckled floor and let the words flow over me. "No, you listen to me." Ryan snapped into the phone. "You're in this too. You certified the forms. You'll get down here. You'll tell him she's unstable, that she steals his meds, whatever you have to say, and you'll be ready to testify at 8. He ended the call, ran both hands through his hair, and when he turned around, he nearly jumped out of his skin, seeing me in the doorway. "Dad, you should be resting," he said, trying to pull the caring son mask back on. I let my shoulders sag. "I just needed air," I said softly. "What's happening? Who's Reed? What hearing?" He was already spinning. "Her psychiatrist, Dad. He's just trying to help. There's going to be a little meeting in the morning with a judge to keep you safe while we sort things out. That's all." A little, meeting an emergency hearing to sign my mind over like a piece of property. When he finally convinced himself I believe him, he all but pushed me toward the exit. Go home. Get some sleep. I'll stay with Emily and talk to Reed. I'll call you after the hearing. He wanted me alone, scared, and unrepresented when a stranger in a robe stamped incompetent on my life. Instead, at 3 a.m., I told the cab driver to take me to my daughter's house. Not mine. And if you're still here, hit subscribe, because what I found on our laptop in that dark, expensive office turned this from a family tragedy into open war. Emily and Ryan's house looked like every luxury listing you see in glossy magazines. All glass and cold angles. But at 3:30 in the morning, it was just a dark box on a quiet street. I used the spare key they'd forgotten I knew about, the one in the cracked planter by the back door, and walked straight to home office where Emily kept her slim silver laptop. No password, of course. That level of arrogance you only get when you think the old man who paid for everything is harmless. I sat in her white leather chair, opened her email, and typed one name in the search bar. Reed. Dozens of messages popped up, not just between her and Ryan, but between them and a Dr. A. Reed. The subject line on one thread made my stomach clench. Project Lantern, Shaw. Contingency. I clicked. The first email was from Ryan. He's becoming suspicious. The sale will trigger audits we don't need. We have to move the timeline up. The reply from Reed was pure poison written in doctor's language. A forced. Psychiatric hold requires a precipitating event. Confusion must be documented. The compound I prescribed under an alias will induce acute disorientation and symptoms consistent with vascular dementia in an older patient within 20 minutes of ingestion. The next message was from my daughter. We'll do it at the celebration dinner. He always orders red wine. Once he's admitted, you certify. Ryan files. We get emergency control before the regulators start digging into logistics. I scrolled down. There was a PDF attachment from a law office. I opened it and saw my name at the top in thick black letters. In emergency conservatorship of Daniel Cole. They'd already filled everything in. Mr. Cole has displayed rapid cognitive decline, paranoia, financial recklessness, and is vulnerable to exploitation. The last page made my hand shake. Petitioner. Ryan Ford. Proposed conservator. Hearing date. 8 a.m. Same morning, judge's name, courtroom number. By 9 o'clock, they expected me to be legally declared incapable of managing my own life, while my son-in-law signed for my $60 million, my assets, even my medical decisions, and my own daughter had signed a supporting declaration saying she'd noticed her father's decline. I closed the file, forwarded the entire chain to one person, the only person I trusted to turn this into a weapon, my attorney, Marcus Wright, the shark who negotiated the Helix sale. I called him next. It rang twice. This better be a real emergency, Daniel, he growled. It is, I said, my voice suddenly steady, all the fear burning away into focus. I need you in your office now, not at 9 now, and I need you to bring your meanest side. There was a pause and a sigh. Put coffee on. Send me what you've got, and don't say another word on open line. By 4 a.m., we were in his corner office high above the sleeping city. The conference table between us covered in printouts. My hands wrapped around coffee I wasn't drinking. I laid it all out for him like a quarterly report. The dinner, Evan's warning, the glass switch, Emily's collapse, the drug, Ryan's allergy story, the phone call to Reed, the emails, the petition, the timing. They don't just want your money, Wright said finally, tapping the conservatorship papers with his pen. They want you off the board of your own life, so you can't ask questions when the regulators show up. That makes me think this isn't only about inheritance. It's about whatever Ryan's been running through your shipping lanes. I thought of all his questions over the last year, about cold chain containers, about customs brokers, about what would happen if a box went missing overseas. Would anyone even notice? I thought he was just trying to impress me. The sale triggers a federal audit. Wright said, confirming what I already knew. They don't just check your books. They comb every manifest. If he's been piggybacking contraband on your clean routes, that audit will light him up like a Christmas tree. My. $60 million wasn't his win. It was his deadline. That's when the phone on Wright's desk rang, his investigator. They already had a file on Dr. Reed. Gambling debts. $300,000, all owed to an offshore sportsbook owned by a shell company called RF Global Imports. one corporate layer away from Ryan's own little empire. So your future son-in-law literally owns his doctor's debt, Wright said, a cold smile creeping over his face, which means we own the doctor's conscience if we squeeze. Just right. The clock on the wall said 6:15 when we finished the outline of our counterattack. Ryan thought I'd be wandering my house in a daze by sunrise, waiting for his tame psychiatrist to knock. Instead, I was sitting across from a man who'd eaten people like Ryan for breakfast, and when Ryan finally called my cell, sounding oh so concerned, telling me Dr. Reed was on his way to check on me at home, Wright just mouthed one word, play. So I did. My voice shook on command. I let Ryan talk to me like a misbehaving child. I agreed to go home and wait. Then the second I hung up, Wright grabbed his briefcase. Let them send their pet doctor to an empty house. He said, "Well, you're going somewhere else, Daniel. We're going to be sitting in the courtroom before they even realize you're not missing. If you're still watching, tell me in the comments if you'd walk into that hearing or run, because the way we turn their own trap inside out is something I still replay in my head like a movie. The county courthouse at 8 in the morning is a miserable place. Bad coffee, buzzing lights, tired clerks, and people in cheap suits arguing over ugly family secrets. Wright and I stood at the end of the hallway outside courtroom 3B, just far enough from the little wire glass window that no one inside could see us, but close enough that we could see them. Ryan was in his best charcoal suit, the one I'd paid for, pacing like a caged animal, his face pale, eyes wild from no sleep. Next to him sat a too-smooth lawyer with a shiny tie and a rented confidence look on his face, and on the bench behind him, hands clasped in his lap, was Dr. Albert Reed. In person, he looked smaller than I expected. Thinning hair, nice watch he definitely couldn't afford on a regular salary. His eyes kept jumping to the door, then back to Ryan like he was waiting for orders. He thinks you're lost, wandering around talking to walls, Wright murmured beside me. Let him say it under oath. A bailiff opened the door and called the room to order. Wright tugged my sleeve. Not yet, he whispered. We walk in only when it hurts the most. So we waited in the hall while inside Ryan's lawyer began to sell the story. Your Honor, we're here on an emergency petition because my client's father-in-law has suffered a catastrophic decline. He said, I could hear him through the door, every word like a bad radio play. Last night, Mr. Cole became violent and confused in a public restaurant, attacked his own daughter, and then fled the scene. As of this morning, he is missing. I almost laughed, missing. I was 20 feet away and more present than I'd been in years. We have with us his treating physician, Dr. Reed, the lawyer droned on, who will testify that Mr. Cole is no longer capable of managing his affairs and is a danger to himself and his $60 million estate. The judge, a man with a reputation for being impatient, cleared his throat. I heard the scrape of chairs, the soft command, call your first witness. That was Wright's cue. He pushed the door open without knocking, his voice slicing into the room like a blade. Apologies for the delay, Your Honor. It appears my client and I were given a slightly creative version of the schedule. Every head turned. Ryan's went white, not pale, white like all the blood in his body had just dropped into his shoes. I walked him behind, Wright wearing the same tailored suit I'd worn to sign the sale, tie straight. Shoes shined, eyes clear, not a hint of confusion. I went straight to the fence table and sat down as if I owned the building. Maybe I did. In that moment, the judge blinked. Mr. Jennings, you told this court Mr. Cole was missing, he said slowly. Ryan's lawyer stammered, sweating through his too-thin shirt. We were informed he'd fled his home this morning. Your Honor, this only proves the erratic behavior we're talking about. He tried to twist my very presence into evidence of madness. We're prepared to call Dr. Reed. The bailiff swore in Reed, who shuffled to stand and raised his right hand with fingers that trembled more than he wanted them to. Doctor, the lawyer began, in your professional opinion, what is Mr. Cole's mental state? And Reed started to lie, talking about episodes of paranoia and memory gaps, and how he'd examined me at home this very morning and found me agitated and confused. I let him dig his hole, eyes lowered like a scolded old man, until it was Wright's turn. He walked slowly to the front, file in hand, smiling like a man who just spotted easy prey. Dr. Reed, good morning, he said. You testify that you're Mr. Cole's primary physician, yes, Reed nodded. And you saw him at his home this morning around 7. That's correct, Reed said. He was in a highly agitated state. Interesting, Wright said. flipping open the file. Because at 7 this morning, Mr. Cole was in my office downtown, drinking coffee and reading this very petition you. Signed, would you like to revise your timeline? A murmur rippled the courtroom. Reed stuttered, tried to backpedal. Perhaps it was yesterday. My schedule has been crowded with gambling debts. Wright cut in, his voice still polite. Doctor, are you familiar with a Cayman account ending in 7428, held in your name, receiving regular payments from a company called RF Global Imports? Ryan's shoulders stiffened. His lawyer paled. Reed froze. That's private. Not when you're giving expert testimony. The judge said sharply, answer the question. Wright laid a blown-up statement on an easel, big black numbers underlined. Over $300,000 over the last 6 months, all from a shell owned by Mr. Ryan Ford. Does that refresh your memory about who your real client is today? Reed's face crumpled. The fight went out of him all at once. He owned the debt, he blurted, voice cracking. He said if I didn't help, I'd lose my license. He gave me the drug. He told me what to write. He said the old man was already confused. I never even examined him. It was all on paper. I just... Signed. The court went dead silent. Somewhere behind me, someone exhaled. The judge leaned forward, eyes hard. Ryan's lawyer sank into a chair like a balloon with a knife in it, and Ryan himself just stared at me, hatred and panic wrestling behind his eyes. If you're still here, drop a part 5 in the comments, because even with his doctor broken on the stand, Ryan wasn't done yet. And his next move was the one that woke up the FBI when a cornered animal realizes the cage door is closing. It doesn't get reasonable. It gets violent. Ryan shot to his feet before anyone could stop him, jabbing a finger at me. He's lying, they're both lying, he shouted, voice cracking. My father-in-law is sick. He poisoned my wife. Ask anyone at the restaurant. He switched the glasses. He's been losing it for months. He tried to drown Reed's confession in a tidal wave of accusations, painting himself as the last sane man in a family collapsing around him. The judge slammed his gavel. Sit down, mister. Ford, you will get your turn. But Ryan was past listening. His own lawyer tugged at his sleeve, hissing for him to stop, useless. The judge finally turned to me. Mr. Cole, you've heard some extraordinary claims this morning. Do you wish to respond? I stood slowly buttoning my jacket, and for the first time in that courtroom, I stopped playing fragile old man and spoke the way I had in every boardroom for 40 years. Yes, Your Honor, I do, I said, my voice steady. The truth is simple in the story you just heard. I looked at Ryan, then at Reed, then back to the judge. My daughter did pour a drug into my wine last night. That part is true. She believed it would make me look confused and incapacitated. What she didn't know was that a terrified young waiter warned me, and that I switched the glasses. The only person who drank that powder was Emily. A sharp inhale went to the room. I kept going. The drug, neurazepine, is not some harmless sedative. It's a heavy antipsychotic that in a dose like that mimics acute dementia in an older patient, confusion, slurred speech, incoherence. The exact symptoms described in this petition. I held up the emergency conservatorship papers, the ones with my decline, outlined in polished legal language. This document was filed before dinner was even over, signed by Dr. Reed, paid $300,000 to a shell company owned by my son-in-law. They didn't want to help me, Your Honor. They wanted to erase me. I saw the judge glance at the signatures, the timestamps, his jaw tighten. But why, he asked, and that was a question I've been waiting for. I turned fully toward Ryan. Because my company doesn't just make medicine, it moves it, I said. For 30 years, Helix Arden has shipped sensitive biological material all over the world in climate-controlled containers under strict federal licenses. For the last year, Ryan has been very interested in those containers and my customs brokers, and how often a crate is spot-checked. Curiosity. I thought it wasn't. Wright slid another file onto the table. When I agreed to sell Helix, it triggered a full federal audit of every manifest en route for the last 5 years. I continued. That audit would have shown something new. Extra cargo riding on my clean paperwork. Goods moved through a global import company run by my son-in-law. The kind of goods you don't declare. I let the courtroom sit with that. Ryan didn't drug me to get rich. He did to stay out of prison. If he'd gotten this conservatorship, he would have had $60 million in my name and legal control of my signature, just in time to disappear before the audit landed. Ryan snapped. Something inside him just Tor, you have no proof, he snarled, then turned to bolt. As if he could still outrun what was coming, two men in dark suits at the back of the room moved faster. One grabbed his arm. The other flashed a badge. Ryan Ford. The taller one said, voice calm, I'm Special Agent Davies with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, interference with regulated shipments, and bribery of a medical professional. You have the right to remain silent. Handcuffs clicked around Ryan's wrists. He fought, twisted, tried to lunge at me. You old bastard, I'll ruin you, he screamed as they dragged him toward the door. You ruined yourself. I said quietly, more for me than for him. Dr. Reed sat on the stand, sobbing openly now, his career vaporizing the same air as Ryan's freedom. The judge looked at me, at the FBI, at the broken doctor, and finally said, this petition is denied, summarily, and I am referring this entire matter to the district attorney. The gavel came down one last time, and just like that, the legal bullet they'd aimed at my head turned around in the air. But if you think that's where the story ends, it isn't, because the hardest part wasn't watching my greedy son-in-law go off in cuffs. It was walking into my daughter's hospital room afterward and deciding what to do with the person who'd held a vial. If you've made it this far, drop a part 6 in the comments and tell me what you'd do to a child who tried to sell your sanity for a payday. St. Jude's psych ward was quieter than the ER, but it had the same too bright light and the same smell of disinfectant trying to cover something older. A tired cop sat on a chair outside Emily's door, watching the news on his phone. I didn't need to ask what he was looking at. Every channel in the lobby was already replaying footage of Ryan being hauled out of court. The officer glanced up, recognized me from the same clips, and nodded me through. Emily was propped up in bed, pale, eyes swollen, and Ford dripping slowly into her arm. The television in the corner was muted, but I could still see Ryan's face on the screen, caught mid-scream. The headline reading, Businessman's Son-in-Law, Arrested in Smuggling and Fraud Probe. Emily's gaze was glued to it until she noticed me. Dad, she whispered, voice hoarse. What's happening? Why are they arresting Ryan? What did you tell them? Even now, her first instinct was to look for someone else to blame. I didn't go to her bedside. Not yet. I stood at the window instead, looking down at the parking lot. They arrested him because of what he did, Emily. I said, not because of what I said. She started crying, soft, helpless sobs. I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know about any smuggling. I just thought the medicine would calm you down. He said you were getting worse. He said you'd lose everything if we didn't step in. I turned, looked at her, really looked. The girl who used to fall asleep on my office couch now avoided my eyes like a child caught stealing. You poured a drug into my drink. I said, no anger, just the fact. You signed a statement saying I was paranoid and irresponsible. You were on your way to a hearing to have a judge take my life away on paper. Don't tell me you thought this was for my own good. She flinched. The denial died half-formed on her tongue. He told me you'd blow the money, Dad, she whispered. That other people would take advantage of you. That this was the only way to protect what you built. I know it sounds bad, but we were scared. No. I said, you were greedy, there's a difference. She broke then, all the performance gone, sobbing into her hands. Am I going to prison? She choked out. For conspiracy, or whatever they called it, I didn't think. They'd actually. She couldn't even finish the sentence. The irony that she hadn't thought beyond the money would have been funny in another life. I walked to the chair beside her bed and sat. The room felt small, stuffed with every choice we both made. You might. I said honestly. You signed emails, you bought the vial, you walked into that restaurant with a plan to take away my mind. You are not just a wife. You were an active partner. She looked at me like a drowning person looks at shore. Please, Dad, you can fix this. You always fix everything. Tell them it was his idea. Tell them I was confused. I'll do anything. And that was the moment I realized what Hannah had seen years ago. That underneath all the polish and the Instagram smiles, our daughter had learned to treat me like a safety net, not a father. Here's what I'm going to do. I said, I'm going to use my money to keep you out of the cell. I will hire a legal team that makes right look gentle. They'll argue you were coerced, manipulated, grieving, stupid. Whatever story keeps you technically free. Hope sparked in her eyes, pathetic and small. Thank you, she breathed. I promise I'll change. But I cut in, watching that flicker of hope. Freeze, you will not get a single dollar of my $60 million. Not now. Not in my will. Not until you are a completely different person. The trust is locked. I control the disbursements. Your lawyers and therapists will be paid directly. You will not touch the money you try to steal. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then how am I supposed to live? She whispered. How do I pay rent, eat? You get a job. I said simply, a real one, at minimum wage, picking up other people's messes. For once in your life, and you'll do it at a place I choose, supervised by someone who knows exactly what you almost became. She frowned, confused. What place? I stood, walked to the door. A shelter I'm funding. For people who don't have a father with $60 million to bail them out. I said, they need someone to scrub their bathrooms and mop their floors on night shift, and you're going to learn what it feels like to serve instead of take. She started to speak, to argue, but the cop outside the door shifted, and she swallowed the words. I left her there, under the bright lights, surrounded by rails and machines, knowing that for the first time in her life there were going to be consequences she couldn't charm. Or cry her way out of. If you're still watching, tell me in the comments if you think that was too harsh or not nearly enough. Because 6 months later, when I saw her again, I finally got my answer 6 months after the night my daughter tried to erase my mind. The house Hannah and I bought 35 years ago looked exactly the same from the outside. Same brick, same creaking porch step, same old oak tree we planted when Emily was born. Inside, though, everything felt different, not because of the furniture, but because of the silence, the kind that doesn't hurt anymore. I was sitting in Hannah's old armchair reading when the doorbell rang, not frantic, just two polite chimes. I opened to find Evan, the young waiter who'd warned me at Loranger Blue, standing on my porch in a well-cut suit with a leather folder under his arm instead of a tray. Mr. Cole, he said, smiling a little awkwardly. You said if I ever needed a job. 6 months earlier I kept that promise, hired him as my assistant, then my junior analyst. Turned out the kid who'd had the courage to speak up in that lobby also had a talent for numbers. Now he was my personal finance manager, the person I trusted to help oversee the charity. Foundation I'd set up with the first chunk of audit clean money. Come in, Evan, I said, stepping aside. Tell me the good news first. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where Emily used to do her homework. Evan opened the folder. The foundation accounts are healthy. The auditors signed off, and the shelter is fully funded for the next 3 years. He said, we're already housing more people than projected. I nodded, letting that sink in, some part of me remembering how Ryan had planned to use my logistics to move poison for profit, and how we were now using the same precision to move food, blankets, and medicine instead. And Emily, I asked finally, because that was a name we'd both been avoiding, how is she doing at the shelter? Evan checked a page near the back, his expression neutral, but his eyes giving away a hint of something like respect. She's completed 3 months of night shifts, he said. Cleans every bathroom, every hallway, does the laundry. No complaints, no special treatment. Some cry in the storage closet, according to her supervisor, but she always comes back out and finishes the job. I pictured her there, in a cheap polo shirt and non-slip shoes, scrubbing floors instead of signing petitions. Any trouble? I asked. Any drama? She tried to quit week 2 when someone recognized her from the news, he admitted, but the program counselor reminded her that if she walks away, the plea deal walks with her. So she stayed, and Mr. Cole, she's quieter now. I nodded slowly, stared out the window at the oak, its leaves starting to turn gold. Good. I said, that's a start. Evan hesitated, then asked the question everyone always asks, do you think you'll ever forgive her? I took a long breath, listening to the old house creak. Forgiveness isn't a switch, Evan. I said, it's more like those audits you helped me through. Slow, ugly, thorough. We're still in the first quarter. He smiled a little at that, stood to go over the rest of the numbers with me. And as we worked, I realized something. For the first time in years, my life wasn't built around protecting my company, my money, or even my image. It was built around protecting the part of me Ryan had underestimated the most, my ability to choose who I trusted and who I didn't. This whole mess started because 2 people looked at $60 million and saw a shortcut to a life they hadn't earned. They saw an old man and forgot he was the one who created the thing they were trying to steal. In the end, I kept the money, lost the illusions, and gave my daughter something she'd never had before, a chance to rebuild herself without a safety net. If you've watched till now, let me ask you this. What would you have done in my place? Would you have cut her off completely? Or giving her the kind of brutal second chance I did. Tell me in the comments. And if you think more people need to hear how dangerous entitlement can be, hit like, hit subscribe. And remember, sometimes the only way to protect what you build is to finally let the people who try to break you stand on their own 2 feet or fall without you.